did, and then
We're so philosophical.
I know, I
Yeah,
swear, I
we
see
were
lab
too-
podcast. Okay. You might be wondering why I'm swimming at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm currently in a pool. You want to make banana bread? Good morning and welcome to this video. For those who don't know me, my name is Sarah and I will be a first year medical student this coming fall at Boston University إن شاء الله. أهلين وسهلين للمشاهدين العرب. هحط لكم subtitles بالعربي إذا ما بتفهموا إنجليزي وإن شاء الله تتهنوا بها الفيديو. It basically takes a lot of effort to get into medical school here in the US. I'm sure it takes a lot of effort to get into medical school anywhere in the world, but particularly in the US, there are a bunch of steps that you have to take to finally be able to even apply to med school. So other than coursework, another big component of getting into med school, or competitive medical school, is research. I personally completed a year's worth of research in a neuroscience lab, Huntington's disease lab, and today I wanted to talk to you guys about my experience with research. I actually shifted my mindset on research and what I wanted to do in the future as a physician. And I think it'll be super interesting to talk to you guys about that. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Instead of just speaking to you guys about my research experience here on my desk, I thought I would go meet up with my friends who were in lab with me and talk to you guys about our experience collectively while we have coffee. Okay, come along for the ride. So how did I get the research position? It was December of 2022. I remember I was in Chicago with my family. Actually, Christmas Day, I remember because my younger brother Hayyan had a really bad case of strep throat, and we were trying to look for any pharmacy open in our vicinity, and we couldn't find any. Ended up taking him to the ER. Had fevers, cold sweats, chills. He was just in a very bad case. So, and to add on to that, it was snowing, so we were in snowy Chicago. Basically had to walk literally in the snow a little bit while he was freezing. It was December 2022 and I was planning to graduate from my undergrad December 2023. So I wanted a whole year's worth of research experience before I, go to med school, apply to med school, etc. I basically looked up all the PIs. PI stands for primary or principal investigator. They're the people who lead the labs on the medical school that my undergraduate school was associated with. You don't have to do it on a medical school campus, but I was taking a class on the med school campus called dissection techniques, which was a very cool class actually. As an undergrad, you got to dissect cadavers. I think in Arabic it's called tashrih, which you do as a first year medical student. So human cadavers. Very, very interesting class. Confirmed to me that I like working with my hands. I was particularly interested in a neuroscience lab just because I like the neuroscience field. So I emailed all the PIs in the neuroscience department, and then I emailed some other PIs that I was interested in. I think it came out to maybe like 10 to 15 PIs. Damn, I missed my exit. Yeah, so I basically told them, hi, my name is Sara Etasi, this is my GPA, I got an A in these classes relevant to research, and I have this availability, I can do research in your lab for the next year. I read a little bit about HPI's research, and I said, I was fascinated or was interested in the research you were doing, and I would like to contribute to it, and I'm a fast learner, etc., etc. I'll put the exact thing I emailed also on the screen, and then I got a response back from only 2 of the PIs out of them all. So the first one actually responded right away saying, I'm sorry, we're not accepting anyone. Then I got another email the next day from the PI I ended up working with saying, I'm interested to do an interview with you. When are you available for an interview? And then she basically Zoomed and did an interview over Zoom. She told me a little bit about her research lab, and then she basically tested me on my molecular biology and biochemistry knowledge. So I would definitely review anything related to research, like what is PCR, what are the 4 biomolecules. She tested me on it, and it was on the spot, and I had no idea she would do that. I thought it would just be like, oh, what's your availability, what are your interests. But yeah, she actually tested me on them. And she told me what I would be doing in the lab, and then she told me a little bit about the project that was available for me to basically hop on and work on. Don't underestimate the importance of the information you're being told by your PI ever. So actually, funny story about that. She asked me to write her a mini report of the project that I was going to be working on so that she could gauge my comprehension of it. And obviously, my comprehension of it was very minimal. I had no idea what she was talking about, and I just nodded along pretending like I did. So please, I would advise you guys, ask questions if you don't understand. Like, the reason I didn't is because I didn't want to come off as dumb, so I didn't ask questions, but I ended up sounding them anyways because I wrote her a report that made absolutely no sense. And it bit me in the back because she basically emailed me back saying, I am very concerned, period. She was just like, I'm like, oh. When I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, what did I do? I was very keen on getting this position and now I ruined my chances. But no, she basically said, I thought that we had a great understanding of each other and you would make a great, mentoree for me and that you have a lot of potential. But now I'm seeing that you clearly didn't understand what I was talking about. And she basically then just said at the end of the email, I don't know. Let me know what you think. And I was like, what do I think? I think that we need to meet again. So I emailed her saying, hi, I'm very sorry for the misunderstanding. I would, I still think I would make a great candidate for your lab. I'm a fast learner, and I would please, can we please have another meeting to clarify so that I could ask you questions. I admitted that it was wrong of me not to ask questions, and then when we did have the next meeting and she talked about the project again, I asked her if I could record the meeting and she said I could, which was perfect because I looked back at that recording right after the meeting and basically jotted down all the notes I needed to for the report to send to her. So yeah, record meeting, take notes, ask questions, don't worry about looking dumb. If it's the first time you ever do research, you will not know things about research just by listening to them the first time. You need to ask for clarification. So then, yeah, she liked the second report I did, and then she asked me when I could start. I told her, can I start after my MCAT? I was basically taking the MCAT January 15, and that was December. Right after the MCAT, I started. I went into lab, and then I will continue talking to you guys about that with Zaina and Isa.
Hi, my name is Zaina.
Oh, Zaina, add some Arabic.
Oh, no, Sarah.
A little bit. Hi,
The
guys.
Arabs will make fun of me. مرحبا اسمي زينة.
زينة عربيتها مكسرة مثلي.
كتير مكسرة. Okay, أنا اسمي زينة. أنا من فلسطين وعمري is none of your business.
Okay, Isa.
I'll speak in Tagalog.
Okay. Actually, you should.
Pangalan ko is Isa. I don't know what you guys said. My name is Isa. I'm from the Philippines and I'm 23 years old.
Zaina, you are young and beautiful.
am
It doesn't matter.
A quarter of a century years old.
Quarter of a century, guys. Because Zaina and I joined the research lab that I was telling you guys about around the same time, and Isa had already been there for a year. So yeah, we spent a year there, about a year there.
15 شهر. So I had graduated from my master's, and when this happened, I got my master's during COVID. So I didn't really have any research experience because everything was online. And so I wanted actual like in lab research experience. And I had the professor whose lab I worked at, I had her class during one of my neuro classes, and I liked her research because she does research into Huntington's disease, and I'm a big fan of like studying neurodegenerative disorders. And so I just emailed her and I was just like, hi, I'm looking for research experience. Are you hiring or anything like that? And then she emailed me back and she remembered me from the class and said, yes, I am. And then I interviewed and I got the job, alhamdulillah. So that's how I ended up in the lab.
if you have a class with a professor that you know does research, make a good impression on them. If you want to do research with them, go speak to them during class, mention to
Ask
them.
questions. I was the girl that asked questions. There was actually other people in the lab that had been in my class, and they remembered me from our class. And our class was actually pretty big, and I never recognized them from class, but they remembered me because I was always asking questions. So it's like make an impression.
They
You didn't
called
remember?
her. They called her that nerd who asked a lot of questions.
Yes.
I actually TA'd for her class, and I did remember her. And also
Why
our
would it to you?
yeah, so I was teaching as an undergraduate assistant for her class. As for how I got into the lab, I had her class, I think maybe a year before, and I was just cold emailing professors. I think I only emailed two. One of them responded that
Always only emails like four.
one of them responded that they didn't have any positions available, and our lab actually emailed me and they said I could join online. This was during COVID. So I was doing online, like just data analysis stuff. And then one day at one of our meetings, she said there's a position available in person. And I immediately was like, I'm coming. And so I have been in the lab ever since. And then we recently left a couple months ago.
We collectively left.
You know, I really thought that I wouldn't like research. I wasn't really interested in it at all. But med school is really competitive now, so everybody who applies has at least some research and clinical experience. So I like the clinic, but I didn't know if I would like research.
Actually, I was actually in the same exact position as Isa before I did research. It was something that was very intimidating for me, something that I was just not knowledgeable at all. My bread and butter during undergrad was mostly like clinical experiences, like working in the hospital, working in the clinics, doing volunteering and stuff like that. So going into research was something very new to me, but I actually ended up loving it.
So I was not a med student or did not aspire to be a med student, but I did want to get my PhD. I actually did my undergrad in Jordan in pharmacy. And then when I graduated from there, I knew I wanted to continue studying. So I did my master's in neuroscience here. And then I knew again I wanted to continue to get my PhD. And to get your PhD, you need to have research experience. And like I said before, my master's was during COVID, so I didn't get to have the lab experience. So for me, I was like, okay, I need to get the research experience. So it's like when I first started, it was more of a means to an end. Like, okay, I need to get this research, so let me just get whatever. But I really enjoyed it. I knew that I really liked the neuro world. I liked all the questions and all of the potential solutions to those questions that like we discuss and that was why I got into research and I really like it and I hope to continue pursuing it honestly.
Great answer, guys.
I really ended up liking it too. Specifically, just doing research, not the specific lab, but I really enjoyed neuro, and now I can't imagine doing anything without research. I would love to do research.
Yeah. And then something else I think that was super special about our lab in particular is that it was kind of like a clinical application based research. So the stuff that we were studying in lab, which, we did Huntington's disease, but other movement. For those who don't know what Huntington's disease is, it's basically a neurodegenerative disorder. Um, it can be hereditary and it can also be environmental. So either you get it from the environment, which is very unlikely, or you are born with the gene that causes the disease. And it causes things like chorea, which is abnormal movements, and eventually you can lose the ability to speak and just act properly, even walk. So it's a very devastating disease, and there's not a lot of treatment options right now currently available. So our lab basically was a genetic therapy lab. So trying to target the actual disease from the gene itself, rather than targeting the symptoms or trying to just treat the pains and stuff. So anyways, I think it's super exciting just even talking about this, or the ability or the possibility of trying to cure something like that. So in our lab we had a clinic that was newly opened by our university, where we would see Huntington's disease patients. Obviously we were not applying the genetic therapy that we were studying in the lab to them, because it was still undergoing clinical trials, and it's very difficult to basically be able to pass clinical trials, let alone get to human trials. So we were kind of just seeing them and studying them. We would extract samples from them to study more in our lab. So it was very interesting stuff. And I feel like all of us as future clinicians, whether we're physicians or researchers or whatever we want to do, we want to implement that in our work because we don't just want to practice medicine, we want to add on to medicine and improve it.
With research, like it shows you all the potential advancements we can have, and it like adds hope to any disease. You know, it's like whether you make breakthroughs with cancer or Huntington's or any disease, it's like it's always a one step forward for every other disease, because you're like, oh, okay, if they found something for this, they can potentially find something for something else. So it's like it feels really good being a part of that hope, even if you have like a very small role in the lab itself.
It was really cool too to have a clinic because at first, like a lot of our work was with mice and just like mice DNA, mice tissues, and whatever. Yeah, mouse Huntington. And once we opened up the clinic, which was pretty recently, I think last year, we had real patients that we were seeing, and it was less of like watching videos and making PowerPoints and whatever, but we saw like patients in the clinic, which I think was really cool to see.
Comparably, you can basically think of it as you're a medical student studying in university and you're reading about cases, and then you actually go to the hospital and you're seeing the actual patients and you're seeing the ooh, food came. And you're, thank you. Actually seeing these patients with the diseases that you're studying about, it just makes you so much more passionate to put in the work and to study and to really, try to help these people because it's just so devastating to see some of these cases, and actually putting a face to the thing you're learning truly brings meaning to your work. Good, and
We're
then,
so philosophical.
I know,
guys.
I swear,
we were
lab
too-
podcast.
We were too lecturing. I got serum panini.
I got Southwest panini. It's chicken.
صحتين.
Delicious.
I think one of the best things that came out of lab were the skills that I gained, like the things I learned how to do in lab. I just never imagined myself doing that kind of stuff. Especially Zaina. So Zaina and Isa work with the actual mice. So they would basically draw blood from the mice. They would kill the mice. They would
Wait, bro,
breed
guys,
the mice.
I never in my life thought I would be able to touch a mouse, let alone like scruff it. So that's like the specific way you're supposed to grab the mouse, give them injections in the stomach area, the IP area, the saphenous vein blood collection, cardiac puncture, euthanizing them,
Breeding them.
breeding them, what's it called? Pup brain collections. Now that is one skill that
Basically,
I
they
am
were
in
neurosurgeons.
awe of learning. So we had to collect neurons on specific days for specific reasons, okay? And so we would time the pregnancy of the mouse, and then we would collect the embryo from the mouse and then collect the brain from the embryo itself. So it's like the pup, which is the baby mouse, the unborn mouse, is literally 15 days in utero when you collect it. And that was one of the most delicate things I ever like have done in my life. And it was like, wow. I was like,
Guys, can you imagine? You're not just collecting a brain from a mouse, which is already small enough. You're collecting a brain from the baby inside the mouse's uterus,
that was wild.
and then you have to do like a procedure to extract the brain cells called neurons from those tiny tiny brains. So it's literally like microsurgery.
Yeah, it was very cool, honestly.
But yeah, very cool stuff. So if you're in a research lab, you can learn a lot of like procedural skills that are very cool. Hopefully, if you work in a mouse lab. And something I learned that I really enjoyed was cell culturing. So cell culturing basically is growing cells in a lab, and I just thought it was fascinating the fact that you could start with just, I don't know, like how many cells would we start with? Maybe like a million cells is a lot of cells, guys. So a million cell vial and turn that into 4 million cells just by growing it. It's kind of like planting, like taking care of your plants. You're nurturing them, you're watering them, you change the fluid that they sit in.
You gotta feed yourself.
You feed your cells, and so I think that was a super cool skill to learn. Also, good genotyping. So genotyping is basically figuring out the genes inside of the cells that you're studying, and to basically know, oh, these mice have these genes, these mice have these genes. We're going to combine this gene mice with this genetically typed mouse, and then make this new breed of different gene combination of mice in a cage. So those were definitely pros. I would say another big pro was, for me personally, just being around the types of people that were in the lab was just something very, very eye opening to me. Like, honestly, I met some of my closest friends from there, and yes, these girls right here. No, not them. Someone else. Other people. I'm kidding. Yeah.
We helped each other so much applying to medical school.
Euthanized more than 500 mice.
I swear it's a time capsule. Like, you go in there, 4 hours pass feels like 4 minutes. Cons. I'm gonna talk about cons, and I'm gonna be very honest with you guys. Toxic lab culture.
Science that does not work according to anyone's time. Speaking of pop culture, have you guys seen that Apple released their like
Yeah, Apple Vision Pro.
the glass?
No, it's Snoop Dogg when he gave like his Grammy acceptance speech.
Oh, I didn't. I mean, they never confirmed that they were even in a relationship. For them to confirm that they've broken up. So